The first and the most underestimated is your financials, i.e., being able to record your performance. And that's the tool that you can, so valuable to you to be able to know how we're performing, where, and it's really goes beyond just how much did I sell, how much did I make, but how much did I sell in comparison to my costs, right? So, and then splitting things in a way that will give you the insight. And so that base foundation layers, it then builds on into being able to forecast our cash flow. Because whether we like it or not, the tragedy really in business is when profitable businesses go under because they run out of cash.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Chidi Egbujie is an accomplished business growth strategist and financial optimization expert with over 20 years of experience in the finance and consulting industries. A qualified chartered accountant and CPA, he specializes in guiding startups and established businesses towards achieving sustainable growth through strategic financial analysis, cash flow management, and business clarity. His extensive experience in high-stakes environments has made him a sought-after advisor for companies looking to thrive in competitive markets. In addition to his advisory work, Chidi is dedicated to sharing his expertise with a broader audience, focusing on actionable insights around business strategy and tax efficiency. His participation in the Biz Help for You podcast aims to provide listeners with practical tools for steering their businesses towards financial success and long-term resilience. You can learn valuable strategies from Chidi on how to set clear business goals, optimize your financial processes, and master cash flow management, all of which are essential for driving sustainable growth and reducing financial stress in your ventures. So, Chidi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What an intro. Thanks, Candy.
I always like to give a bit of a background on my guests, but there's more to it than just what I was able to explain. So I would love for you just to share your story of why you chose accounting for your career.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I think going back to sort of my studies, when I was at university, I actually selfishly chose the modules that allowed me to do more exams than coursework because I just preferred that. And I ended up doing most of the financial topics. And then when I finished university, I just wanted a safe bet. I wanted something that would just guarantee me a certain level of income. So I chose accounting and I qualified as an accountant. And then I worked in some of the big firms because that's where I really wanted to be at the time. There was more money and it was buzzing. So I worked at sort of like JP Morgan, etc. And then at some point, I started to there was like an itch I wanted to scratch, which is working for myself, so, helping people. And that's when I veered off into accounting and support. And so bringing together my experience working with some of the big firms and how they work using data and sort of working virtually, which is something that we've been doing it for a long time. And so trying to use that to help business owners, I find that quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people were probably listening and saying, you find accounting exciting, right? It's not fun for me, which is why there's some of us who do like the bookkeeping or you do the income tax returns or things like that too, because we have the talent and we can do it and they don't. So I'm glad that you're here to talk today on this topic, and help entrepreneurs really understand some of the things that maybe it's just frustrating for them too. It may not be their strength, So I would love to first just even ask you, how can the entrepreneurs get clarity in, the direction for their business and set a strong foundation for strategic growth?
I think one of the areas I find that people kind of miss the point would be to start off in business and not actually have. So it's like we know what we're doing, we know what service we're providing, what products we're selling, and we're going to start and we're just going to do that. And you kind of have this as a business owner, there's this kind of world you're living in where you get paid last, so you pay your staff and then so on. And one of the areas that I focus on first is really trying to understand what that business owner wants ultimately, like not restricted by whether you think you can achieve it or not. And what that does is it makes us then think about, okay, if you want this, whether it's time, whether it's money, what does your business need to do to provide that to you? And then once we have that then as a goal, it then means it forces you to think of solutions and think of different scenarios for yourself and your business. I just think that's a really great unlocking tool.
I think that's important too, because so many of us started businesses without necessarily having a plan of where we were going. Like even for myself, I didn't intend to be a business owner. Somebody asked me to help, with her husband's bookkeeping because she, was kind of put to the task from her husband, and she enjoyed part of it, but a lot of it she didn't, and so I didn't know all the things. I knew all the bookkeeping. I'd been doing it for a while, but I didn't know necessarily how to run a business, how to market the services necessarily, or how to price things, differently than when I was an hourly employee or things like that too. And so a lot of people have a passion or a dream and they don't know everything that goes into that. So I think it's important, like you said, just to really think about, what is it that you want? Do you want to work, 60 hours a week and make a lot of money? Do you want to work not as much and not make as much? Or do you want to work not as much, but still have, high revenue? What does it take to get there? So I think that was great that you even start with them on that topic, because I think a lot of people just start saying, I'm just going to sell my product or service and see what happens. Right?
No, exactly. And to give a very short example, I spoke to a client now who, when we first spoke, he works as a fitness trainer. And so he works in a gym, right, as a fitness trainer. And then what happened then is we start talking about how much he needs. He wants to buy a flat. He needs some money. He needs 100K. And then the question then is, can you make 100K in the gym? And he says, no, you can't. So how are you going to make 100K? And so before we start playing with the numbers, we realize he needs to have a business, or his business needs to turn over 300K to pay him 100K. So now all these ideas, and it's not like I'm not telling him the ideas, but he's thinking, okay, I need to be online, or maybe I need to rent a space, maybe I need to, I need to sell programs, maybe I need to bring in other fitness trainers to help me. So that's the power of knowing where you're going, what you want from your business, should I say.
Exactly. Well, what are some of the key financial processes that businesses should focus on to uncover those growth opportunities?
I think the first and the most underestimated is your financials, i.e., being able to record your performance. And that's the tool that you can, so valuable to you to be able to know how we're performing, and it's really goes beyond just how much did I sell, how much did I make, but how much did I sell in comparison to my costs, right? So, and then splitting things in a way that will give you the insight. And so that base foundation layers, it then builds on into being able to forecast our cash flow. Because whether we like it or not, the tragedy really in business is when profitable businesses go under because they run out of cash. And that happens a lot, right? And so we've got cash flow, and then we've got the being able to, we talked about our goals, but those goals can become targets that we can measure ourselves against and just see how are we getting on. And that's even before we go into the actual performance reporting of really analyzing our costs and our revenue and just seeing how we can improve our performance over time. So there's a lot there, Candy.
hmm Well, and I think a lot of times people don't even look at the financial reports. You know, they might have in their head, oh, well, I have so much money in the bank, I must be okay. And don't look at, like you said, it's not just the top line revenue too, how much are you bringing in, but what is it that you're making at the end of the day because of all the things that go into it. And I remember having someone who came to me that said, well, I don't understand where all the money is. It says I'm profitable, but there's no money in the bank, you know, and not understanding how the balance sheet items work together with the profit and loss. And, you know, not everything that you pay for shows up on your income statement, and really trying to educate so that they really understood that. But a lot of times people they don't understand, or they don't want to take the time to really dig down into it, because they'll think, well, I'm not good with numbers, you know, or I don't understand, you know, what it is. And they might be embarrassed to even say, I don't understand. And I try to let people know too, it's okay to say, like, I need you to help explain this to me. And then we can explain it so they understand it, because, like, I'm not good at a lot of things that they're probably good at. And if I were going to try to understand it, I need them to explain it to me too, right? So I think we have to help people realize it's okay to say, I don't understand, can you explain it to me, right? So they could get that understanding.
No, that's right. Because one of the things that I bring, or I've brought with me from working in some of the big firms, is just being able to use data. So when people sit down and they want to make decisions, a lot of the time they're backed by numbers. Like, how do we do last month? Or before you make I've got this data, I think we should do this. What do you think? You know, that's where the decisions are made based on this information of our performance. And so now we're in a place where you didn't really have to have that huge team to pull those numbers. There's a lot of technology in place and amazing bookkeepers that can help bring that insight or bring that data in front of a business owner to allow those decisions to be made.
So do you want to give an example maybe of something that you've done with a customer where you took some data and you were able to analyze it and help them make a decision? Because I think sometimes people may not understand how to even pull that data and what to do with it, how to analyze it. So maybe if you could give them an example, that would help.
Yeah, and I could give like a critical example and a great example. So the critical
Okay.
example was a client of mine who is a builder, right, in construction, and so they were struggling. I think in the US, I think it's called GST, but we call it VAT, like, so it's state tax basically. So he was struggling to pay his state taxes, right, every quarter. Now, from there, we started to talk about, well, what can we do to improve this? And then we go in and then you start to look at the data. We're making enough turnover. So why are you not making a profit? It's the pricing, how they price, the quality. So everything just has a knock-on effect, because when you price low, then it just means that the quality of labor that you can get is is then cheaper, and then so they're not as great, and then you're not getting this kind of reviews that you normally get. So everything's like a snowball. So it was helping him to then unpick that, starting from the pricing. Then you can price, and then you can offer to bring the right resources on board. They do a great job, and because you price right, you can do all the fancy stuff that some of the clients like. So then they recommend you better. So it was just that kind of that analysis of the performance and how we could fix it. That's really what turned that around. And then on the flip side, I had a restaurant who they were making millions, but they wanted more. And so when it came down to it, they started up as a family. One of them took the role of finance, and literally he was just in the office. They didn't really have any financial processes. They were good at the business, but they didn't really have any financial processes to really guide them. So once we pull that in, get them onto some accounting software, build some reports for them, and then they start seeing all this data. They start analyzing which parts of the business are doing better, what is costing them, where they lose bleeding cash, and then the margins go up. They start to improve their performance. So a lot of it is in the data.
Right. Well, even when you're talking about pricing, it made me think a lot of times people, when they're thinking about their pricing, especially if they're selling products, they just think, well, I buy it for this much. I'm just going to double the price, and leave it at that, and don't really consider all the overhead they have. And a
Yeah.
lot of times that's where they're getting themselves into trouble too. So do you have any strategies you can share with someone about the pricing and how they could figure out maybe what should be their minimum price to make sure that they're covering all their costs?
Yeah, no, 100% pricing. It's a headache, even for, especially
Yeah.
even I feel for the service industry, because people, you look at a
Mhm.
potential client and you think, oh, they can't afford that. Or you think of products, they're not going to pay this much for this product. But really, it's uncovering the value in everything. So really
Mhm.
trying to uncover the value, because sometimes you see a product or service and you package it one way and it's this price. You package it a different way, it's double the price. But not to try and con the market, but it's really trying to uncover the value of
Mhm.
what we bring, whether it's highlighting that in our marketing, whether that's in the packaging or the services or the proposals, whether it's we have to run ads to call out the value. I think that value then means that, we then get closer to the right price, if that makes sense, without selling
Mhm.
ourselves short. But
Mhm.
obviously, you've got to also understand the market, you know. But I guess the point, the last when I said the market, it's always interesting because the market can guide you, but it's not always right.
Mhm.
They think, what's the average price of this in the market? You can say, okay, this is what it is in the market, but they could all be getting it wrong because maybe no one's really highlighting the value of what's in this product or service, and you've got to do that, and then you would stand out from the market.
Mhm. Mhm. So, can you talk about maybe practical steps that the entrepreneur can take to make sure that they have, the cash flow that they need to continue operations, especially when things start to get uncertain?
Yes, for me, the magic is in cash flow forecasts. Because as you mentioned earlier on, profit is one thing and cash is another.
Mhm.
What a cash flow forecast would do, it would be once you get into the habit of, again, like I talked about the foundations being your financials, if we have the foundations as our financials, then what it means is we can then say, I'm going to plot all of my inbound, my inputs and my outputs. So all my cash coming in and my cash going out, regardless of whether you're paying for a loan or you're paying for salaries. Once we plot
Mhm.
this down, then we can look forward and think, okay, I've got this about to change. Well, he's going to go, so I'm going to reduce that. We want to buy this, so I'm going to increase that. So over time, you know, you can just start to see the impact on your cash
Mhm.
flow when you look forward. And then in 4 months' time, I've got this bottleneck where I'm not going to have enough cash. So what do I need to do in my circumstances to change that? Do I need more money in? Do I need to spend less during that period? So those are the kind of things that you could, and it's so critical because, like I
Mhm.
said before, businesses go under because they just get caught out.
Mhm. Well, and so many don't understand the difference between cash flow and profit. And, I remember someone coming to me once who, had a notice from the IRS that said she owed, about $10,000 in tax. And she's like, well, I don't understand because I don't have any money in the bank. And I had to explain, well, you lived off the profit, right? And that's
Yeah,
considered taxable money. So you spent the cash, but the IRS still says, well, you had this much profit in your business, and trying
yeah,
to have people understand that concept sometimes is hard. They don't understand, well, when I take it out as a sole proprietor and I'm not on a, payroll check, that's just a reduction of the equity, right? That's not an
yeah,
expense.
yeah.
So, do you have any tips maybe just to help the entrepreneur really be able to understand if they're looking at a P&L, well, what do I need to adjust to make sure I realize, that there really is more profit than I think, or, obviously the cash flow is important, monitoring that, but when they're monitoring cash flow and forecasting, but also looking at financial reports, like how can they really understand how they work together so they know well, maybe my profit looks higher than I think it is because of this disparity between, the different reports.
Yeah, so I think in the long and short, you just need to track them separately. So it's all well and good seeing my profit, but I need to be able to look at my cash flow. And then the combination of the two would help me decide when to move into that swanky new office, when to hire, when to when to when to invest, because these decisions business owners are making without the guidance of the numbers. They're just saying, we've got more clients now, we've got this big deal, so we need this new office. And then by the time they go into this commitment, you realize actually we can't afford it. It happens all the time. So it's really letting the numbers guide us. So it's and again, where it's challenging is when you have the size of the business. So the smaller you are, you feel that some of these things are too costly or too difficult. But actually, the support is there. You can get part-time people to support you. There's even a cash flow statement, which I talk about. It can be something as simple as Excel that just tracks how much money is coming in, regardless of whether it's you're paying off a loan or we're paying off the car or it's sales or expenses. So that for me, I think is an important one.
So do you want to maybe tell the listener about like planning for those downtimes and reserves that they should be having? Like how much do you recommend that they have in reserve? So if some of those unexpected things come up, they have cash available?
Yeah. So I think for me, the first one would be your taxes, because that catches a lot of people out. And so really, when it comes to taxes, it's all about the tax planning. So if you sat down with your CPA, bookkeeper, whoever, and just said, look, or it's really just trying to work out how much tax do I think, both on the company side, on the personal side, how much tax do I think I'm going to pay here? And it's trying to come up with a percentage, right, after your revenue and your costs, that is going to be my tax. So when I earn my revenue, I'm just going to put that tax aside. If it's 15%, if it's 20%, whatever the number we come up with, then it's just recommended. When you earn a revenue, so if someone pays you 10 grand, I'm just going to put that percentage, 20% away. And then it just means that when the taxes come up, it's not this big shock. I have to then find the money and I don't have the money. So that's sort of one tip. And then it's just really having a buffer. So it's all about being smart and putting money aside when we need to have a buffer just in case of contingency. But I find a lot of people get caught out with the taxes. And then when you're trying to make any big expenditure, you're not planning for it. So right. When we talk about, I mentioned hiring, before you hire, it's not just about the capacity, it's really, can we afford it? Because if we can't, then maybe if we looked at the numbers and we see really how much we can afford in going into the future, then you might take a different stance in terms of maybe that person becomes part-time, maybe we just get a subcontractor, maybe some kind of software that we have to bring in instead of a human being. Those are the kind of decisions that will come out of being able to look ahead and plan.
Right. So we talked about a few mistakes, that businesses might be making when it comes to their finances. Is there any other mistake that you're thinking of top of mind that you would like to share to help the entrepreneur avoid?
So cash flow is a big one. The not having clear goals is another one we talked about. Underestimating the importance of financial data and not having, so I guess highlighting that would be not having the financial processes on the get-go. Because you start off and you think, well, I'm small, I don't really need that. I'm just going to just kind of go day to day. But essentially, you want to have financial processes in place. You want to have a system, whether it's Excel or actual accounting software, that records the performance of the business. Because what that does is it gives you a trend that you can look back on, but also you're just laying foundations for the future. Because you start off, and I've seen this before, you start off in business and you're kind of just doing your thing on the side, and before you know it, it's 2 years, and you haven't got a track record of, you don't know how much you've made and how much you've spent. And in that data, there's some real information that could have changed your course along the way.
Yep. Great tips there. So I do know we are coming close to the end of the time that we have together. So I wanted to ask first if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners. And then secondly, if anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, sure. So I guess for me, my aim is to support business owners. So really, we can bring tax efficiency is something that I'm passionate about. So not trying to break the law, but trying to get people to keep as much more of their money as possible. And on top of that, is really trying to help business owners just to be their best selves and get their best life, because that's really why we're in this. You're in this to make as much money, get the right balance in terms of time. And so really, that's where I come in to help with all these things we talked about, cash flow to ensure you survive, clarity on goals so we have some planning, and essentially managing to navigate those growth levers so that your profits would increase. You can find me, I'm on LinkedIn, Chidi Egbujie on LinkedIn, but also Virtual Focus Accountants on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Chidi, for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate your, chatting with me on this topic today. And it's one that I love too, of course, being in finance. And so thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Candy. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And and you, the guest, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.